Hey CBJ family, welcome to another edition of Journaling the Journey, one book at a time. This video is actually going to be covering the book of Mark. And the Bible records more information about Mark than any other gospel writers, aside from the Apostle John. Luke mentions Mark's name several times in the book of Acts, and a budding Jerusalem church met in Mark's mother's home, which is really super cool. Mark also started the first missionary journey with Paul and Barnabas, but then went home early, though he later traveled with Barnabas to Cyprus for even more mission work. So we kind of see him peppered throughout the New Testament, which is really, really neat. His most personal and significant connection was the one that he had with Peter, who was likely Mark's source for the material in the gospel. Mark's mother's house was a regular enough stop for Peter that the servants recognized him by voice alone. And you can see that in the text in Acts chapter 12. And it appears that Mark was present at Gethsemane, a very young man watching the proceedings from a safe distance. You see that in Mark chapter 14. And it leads some scholars to believe that even the Last Supper may have taken place in Mark's home. We don't really know that, but we know that Mark is definitely an important relationship and a very well spoken of apostle. And so where are we in the timeline of history as we look at the book of Mark? Mark doesn't really offer any comment on Jesus's prophecy regarding the destruction of the temple. And that event happened in AD 70. So we can safely assume that he may have composed this gospel sometime before that event. And the gospel was, written with a distinctly Roman feel to it, particularly when compared to the Jewish emphasis of the book of Matthew. He chose to leave aside most comments on fulfilled prophecy, and that is certainly not what we see from the book of Matthew. He's heavy on Old Testament prophecy. And when he felt compelled to use, Aramaic terms, he would even interpret them. So this suggests possibly that Mark was in Rome, writing from Peter's recollections sometime before that apostle's death, which would have been between 64 and 68 AD, possibly composing this gospel around AD 57 to 59. But why is the book of Mark so important? Mark's gospel essentially portrays Jesus as constantly on the move. I mean, rapid fire. It's a fast-moving gospel, which I love. It's the forward motion that is felt in Mark's writing essentially keeps the reader's mind continually looking ahead to the cross and the resurrection. No short of 39 times, Mark uses the words immediately, giving a sense that Jesus's time on earth was short and that there was so much to accomplish in these few years of ministry. And I think that's also a significant point. So the big idea, while Matthew's gospel portrays Jesus as king, Mark's gospel reveals him as God's servant. Jesus's work was always for a larger purpose, a point that is clearly summarized by Mark in chapter 10, where he says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And Mark filled his gospel with the miracles of Jesus, illustrating again and again that both the power and the compassion of God worked together in Jesus. So How do we apply the book, the Gospel of Mark? Three times in three consecutive chapters, and that's chapter 8, 9, and 10. Mark pictured Jesus informing his disciples of his great sacrifice and the ultimate victory over death. And his disciples either rejected the teaching altogether or they showed themselves, honestly, more concerned with other matters. As Jesus prepared to perform the greatest service in history of the human race, his disciples honestly could only think of themselves and their position or safety. You see the brothers arguing over, who's going to sit on your right or your left, and all of the disciples, questioning whether or not he was being wise to go back into Jerusalem. So I don't know, if you find yourself struggling to get yourself oriented toward sacrificial service, much like the disciples of Jesus did, which I think we all do. The temptations that we all wrestle with when faced with an opportunity to serve another person or to go above and beyond our comfort zone is to pull back within ourselves and to seek comfort or to protect our own interests. That's a very real temptation. And so when you read through this gospel, I think the challenge that Jesus presents to us in the book of Mark involves breaking out of those patterns of self absorption and giving ourselves completely in service to both God and to others. And so, to me, that's really the takeaway of the book of the book of Mark. So, just a fantastic gospel. Enjoy your week studying it out. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.